Okay, first of all, my apologies to everybody who, has been waiting on the bill hearings. We were downstairs in the upstairs in the Budget and Taxation Committee on a pretty hot issue that, with TV cameras and all the like. Any event, we apologize for the delay, but we're here in full bloom and we're ready to get started with Senator Ellis. Come up the witness stand, and your sponsor panelist, you've only got one, is Ross Goldstein. And Ross, why don't you come up here and take a seat? And Senator Ellis, you have unlimited time to present your bill, and then Mr. Goldstein, you'll be limited to 2.5 minutes. And this is our very first bill hearing day, so I don't know if we have any glitches first. The timer that is. Gotcha. So a timer will appear once you start talking. So that said, Senator Ellis, it's all yours on Senate Bill 127.
So good afternoon, Chairman Feldman, and I'm proud to say that for the first time in this room where I had my home for 4 years. So it's good to be back with my colleagues to fix up on a bill that we passed, is now law, and just a minor correction to a bill that's out there. So Vice Chair Kagan, members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Committee, thank you for the opportunity to represent this bill. I'm Arthur Ellis, Senator from District 28, Charles County, and I'm here today to present Senate Bill 127, Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, having to do with student-free application for financial aid data that must be reported to the MGA, the Maryland General Assembly, because of a bill we passed, which opened up the FAFSA process, the free application for student financial aid in our high schools. Our counselors are overworked. They don't have enough counselors in our high schools to help graduating students to fill out the federal financial aid form. So the bill that passed, now law, allows like a community college folks, different members and advocacy agencies in the community to go into high schools and to work with the counselors to help these students to access a lot of money with Pell Grants. So this bill, which I'm presenting today, will make the reporting easier. I got a letter from Mr. Goldstein here saying, hey, there's an easy way to collect the data. Could you sponsor this legislation to allow us to do that? And so the report requirements will be taken over by the Maryland Longitudinal Data System, MLDS Center, which is a state agency.
That's correct.
And so they're fully in support of it and asked for us to do this. So I would like to turn over my unlimited time to Mr. Goldstein to present his 2.5 minutes in testimony.
Okay, well, why don't we, any questions for Senator Ellis before we go to Mr. Goldstein? Okay, yes. Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Senator Ellis, do you miss us?
Very much so, ma'am.
Thank you. Correct answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Simonaire.
I don't know if I missed it in testimony, but I think I'm reading over the bill, and I think we'll need an amendment because the committee name changed, and we still have the old reference. It says that Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, the report will get, so just tweak that one.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, thank you, Senator Simonaire. So this bill was pre-filed before the news came out of the changes, and so I appreciate you picking that up and making that amendment.
Okay, with that technical fix, the Simonaire amendment of the technical fix committee change, we're going to go to you, Mr. Goldstein, 2.5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much, Chairman Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Committee. I'm Ross Goldstein, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 127. So what this bill does is instead of having the county boards report the FAFSA information to us, this bill instead directs the center to collect the individual student FAFSA completion information from the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So we would get that information at the student level and be able to match that to our K-12 student data that's already in the MLDS, which will allow us to report the FAFSA completion rates, not just by county as directed in the bill, but also by race, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status. So not only does this bill, eliminate a reporting requirement for the county boards of education, but it also will provide you with, I think, a more informative and more detailed report. As Senator Ellis pointed out, the MLDS Governing Board fully supports the reporting changes established by this bill, and I therefore ask the committee to return a favorable report on this bill. So I thank Senator Ellis for filing it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Goldstein? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 127. And Senator Ellis, you can stay up there for Senate Bill 4. And we've got panelists signed up. Turner Coggins. Is Turner Coggins here? Why don't you come up here? Amani Abicham. And I've got Turner Coggins signed up a second time. I don't know if that's a...
There are two Turner Coggins.
There are two Turner Coggins?
There are.
Okay.
Turner Coggins the second, Turner Coggins the third.
Okay, well, that explains that. Okay, so the two Turner Coggins, and then Amani Beecham is a third person signed up on your panel. So those are the three we've got here on the list on your sponsor panel, Senator Ellis. Okay, Senator Ellis, so you've got unlimited time, and we're on Senate Bill 4.
Okay, good afternoon again, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Affairs Committee. I'm Arthur Ellis, for the record, representing District 28 in the Senate of Maryland from Charles County. And I'm here today to present Senate Bill 4, Higher Education, the Senator Dolores G. Kelly Scholarship Program establishment. The purpose of this bill is to establish this scholarship program named after our recently retired colleague, who's an educator. This bill was inspired by a trip that I made along with my freshman colleagues 4 years ago to the University of Maryland, College Park. And I see several of those colleagues from that class are here. And when we were at the University of Maryland College Park campus on that freshman bus tour, they had this wonderful presentation from this young man who came in and talked about his wonderful experience at Maryland and how he's mentored, and this program exists at the University of Maryland College Park to allow students from underserved communities fully eligible for the Pell Grant to go to the University of Maryland College Park fully funded. And it's sponsored by the university and selected counties. At the time, it was Baltimore City, I should say, and Prince George's County. And my immediate reaction is, how can I get this program into Charles County? And it took me 3 years, but last year was the first cohort from Charles County to participate in the program at College Park, which is called the Incentive Awards Program. So that successfully established, we asked, how can we take this program to other counties, other schools? So this bill will expand this program, will give the state a hand in actually funding this program, along with the counties and also with the federal government through the Pell Grant. So these students who are eligible for this program are fully Pell Grant eligible. Generally, they're from lower and middle income families and first generation. It's exciting to know that these students that are in the program at University of Maryland are excellent students, and their retention rate, as a matter of fact, is much higher than the university as a whole, like 97% retention rate. It's an amazing program with first-generation students. And here, I'm quite involved with this program. On the picture, you'll see that's me blocking my face with the camera, yes, and that's my wife in the background. This was last year celebrating Charles County's entrance to the program at College Park. And the picture below the First one are members of the first cohort from Charles County, which from like St. Charles High School and Northbourne High School, and I believe Henry Lackey High School. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for these students to really leave a life of lack of access to higher education and to be fully funded and to really have a tremendous opportunity to make a change in their lives going forward. This program will operate as proposed by this bill at our 4 historically black colleges and universities in Maryland. The program will cover the cost of tuition and fees, room and board for 4 years. And each year on this program, a maximum of 10 scholarships per academic year to eligible students per school, per 4 schools, so that's 40 students. And this is really structured to be very affordable and fiscally wise in that the state will be picking up a portion of the cost along with the counties and also the federal government. So just today, we had a letter coming in from Baltimore County saying that they really support this bill. So we look forward to working with them and ask for a favorable opinion, favorable report for Senate Bill 4. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions for Senator Ellis? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the first member of the sponsor panel, Turner Coggins, senior or junior, whoever.
This is the third.
The third.
He has an appointment at 4 o'clock, so.
I'll let you decide amongst yourselves who wants to go first.
I can definitely go first, if that sounds good.
Put the mic.
All right. All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Kagan, and other distinguished committee members. My name is Turner Coggins III, and I am here in support of Senate Bill 4, also known as the Senator Dolores G. Kelly Scholarship Program. As a graduate of Morehouse College, an HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia, and a recipient of an athletic scholarship, I recognize the advantage and privilege I had when attending school. I support this Senate bill because without scholarships, I would never have been a homeowner by the age of 24, a holder of a master's in business administration by the age of 26, a business owner by the age of 31, and a father of 3 by the age of 33. That includes Turner Coggins IV. Student debt not only impacts one's financial position, but also their personal ambitions. If we choose not to support this scholarship program, we very likely are telling all would-be recipients that unfortunately the house they wanted to buy, the future family they wanted to start, or the business they wanted to found will need to be deferred or deprioritized well into the future. I'm not here to change the system, but I am here today to make a difference. If through this testimony I can positively influence your position on the need for more college funding now and in the future, then I've done my job. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. My wife and I are the proud owners of Baby Faye Bilingual Learning Center in Bowie, Maryland. We recently interviewed and hired a part-time aide that is currently enrolled at at Dr. Charles H. Flowers High School. When interviewing the young woman, we asked, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Now, I'm a millennial, so I expected to hear that her desire would be to attend college, the same way myself and many of my peers spoke about when we were her age. To my surprise, the young lady from Generation Z said she prefers skipping college altogether because the burden of student debt wasn't worth it. You see, many students of this younger generation are starting to believe that the stress and stunting of student debt isn't worth the degree you receive. Today is our opportunity to invest in those students and remind them that being college educated doesn't have to be synonymous with stalled ambitions and an invoice from Sally Mae, but instead the foundation of a bright and brilliant future. I thank you for your time and hope you vote yes to Senate Bill 4.
Any questions for that witness? Actually, why don't we go through the whole panel and then we'll open up for some questions. So we'll go next to the other Turner Coggins. Why don't you pass that to your right? Turner
Thank you.
Coggins,
I'm gonna get in as
senior?
much as I can before the
Junior?
timer starts.
Okay, you got two and a half minutes.
Okay, thanks so
Yeah.
very much. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan. Thank you for this. My name is Turner Coggins, Jr., and I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of Senate Bill 4 and the establishing of the Senator Dolores G. Kelly Scholarship Program for the purpose of awarding eligible students, especially those pursuing STEM and education degrees, with the much-needed scholarship funding for the attending of HBCUs in the state of Maryland. As a proud graduate of an HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia, namely Morehouse College, I can genuinely attest to the nurturing atmosphere that provided me with the academic foundation and the inextinguishable fortitude to press forward in academia and later return to Southern Maryland, where I have served our community for the past 25-plus years as an instructor of human anatomy and physiology and an instructor of human nutrition, as well as be the co-PI of 2 National Science Foundation STEM grants at the College of Southern Maryland. According to Teach.org, though HBCUs comprise 3% of our 4-year colleges and universities, they produce approximately 20% of all black college graduates, with half, 50%, of the nation's black public school teachers having graduated from HBCUs. As the demographics change across our state, it behooves deliberate measures to address the lack of especially black male educators in our public school system. For 25 years, I have been the sole full-time black male instructor in the biologicals and physical sciences at the College of Southern Maryland until just recently, when a second black male was added to the rank, who is an HU, you know, master's graduate and present PhD candidate. Senate Bill 4 could not be more timely. The need to educate students from our state for the purpose of remaining in our state, that they might serve the citizens of our state, is as commonsensical as it comes, and Maryland's HBCUs are an integral part of the equation. With built-in recruitment, mentorship, and student advising, Senate Bill 4 provides sound direction for long-term success. Yesterday evening, I received an email from one of my former students. She was accepted into the University of Pittsburgh's physical therapy program. She thanked me for my tutelage, she thanked me for the letter of recommendation that I wrote, and she asked about my grandkids. I hope that you are willing to endorse this bill, and even though Pittsburgh is not a Morehouse or a Coppin or a University of Eastern Shore or Morgan, it is imperative that we include these schools in such a matter. And we thank you for your sound judgment in executing it, Senator Ellis, and I pray that you'll have a favorable decision on its behalf.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. We'll go to Amani Beecham, and then we'll open it up for some questions. Ms. Beecham, got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Amani Beecham, and I currently serve as the Legislative Director for Senator Ellis. However, I'm not here before you today in that capacity. I'm a first-generation college student and graduated just last year. This was a really happy time for me. I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that it took to get to that point, though. When I was applying to colleges, what my family could afford was a determining factor in where I could go, especially coming from a low-income and single-parent household. Even after being accepted into college, I spent my first semester wondering if I would even be able to stay in school due to the financial situation I was in. This is something that I couldn't control. Now, a student's financial situation should not hinder them from wanting to attend a four-year university. The assistance that the Senator Dolores G. Kelly Scholarship would provide students, specifically in historically underserved demographics, is something I can only wish was available to me when it came time to apply for college. The worry that students may feel when stepping into the new arena of college as a whole can be replaced with excitement and hope for the future. The community and mentorship this program would provide can give students the support necessary to thrive, even beyond graduation. For these reasons, I urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 4, the Senator Dolores G. Kelly Scholarship Program. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for any of the panelists or Senator Ellis? Yes, Senator Carrozza.
Senator Ellis, thank you for introducing this bill. And as you know, you may know, recall that I'm proud to represent University of Maryland Eastern Shore, led by Dr. Heidi Anderson. And I'm interested in the point that was made before, not only about keeping our Maryland talented students here in the state of Maryland, but I'm especially interested in keeping them on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So as I'm reading through this, I'm just trying to understand, because it looks like, just trying to understand the process of it, that this is, the way this is set up, that you have to have the county participate, the county make a commitment to participate in this program. And the reason I'm just trying to understand if there's also, if that's the only way, some counties, like Somerset County, where UMES is located, doesn't necessarily have the same resources as a Montgomery County. So I'm just trying to make sure that, obviously, I would want to see our local students participate in this opportunity, but I'm also sensitive to some of the differences between a Somerset County and a Montgomery County.
Okay, and that's a very good observation, Senator Carosa. And so the thing is, the cost to the counties will be very minimal. And because this program is not based on just payment from a county for a student, you have the fully Pell eligible students, and I think the Pell grant is like $6,800 now, and that's in the fiscal note. And so you have that taken off the top. And then you will have the other portion split between the counties and the state. And so the county can choose to fund their portion whichever way they so choose. You can do it through government funds and through private contributions. That's up to the counties to really decide how they would want to do that. But they can use any fiscal vehicle that they so choose in order to help these students to be part of this program.
So I appreciate that, and I'll probably just also follow up by talking to the leadership at UMES and at Somerset County or my other counties to figure out, how they can maximize this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Senator.
Okay, any additional questions for anybody on the panel? Any of the witnesses? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 4, and I want to thank you, Senator Ellis, and your panelists for your testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next up, we've got Senator Rosapep, Senate Bill 121. And Senator Rosapep, you have unlimited time to present your bill, Senate Bill 121.
That would be a big mistake.
It is. The rules are rules. We
The
can't
rules
deviate
are
just
rules.
for you.
I appreciate it. I will not take all the time you've allotted me, so I appreciate it. So it's good to be back, even if briefly. I hope to come back occasionally during the session. And it's nice to see the new members of the committee. I served here for 10 years, and you'll survive as well. So, no, it's great to be with you, and you guys do important work here. So this is pretty short. You have a copy of my testimony, which is a one-page slide in the file of testimony. This is a bill that was passed unanimously by this committee last year, passed unanimously by the Senate last year, and did not pass the House. So we're back again. It is essentially part of the continuing effort that many of us are making, including many in this committee, to make our school systems work better for kids who want careers, whether it's careers that have a college track or careers that don't have a college track but are job-focused. It has three provisions. One is it says that if school systems pay for the fees to take college entrance tests like the SAT, they also need to pay for tests that high school students take to get into apprenticeship programs or earn occupational certificates. It's just say level playing field, whether it's college or it's not college. If a school system is not paying the SAT fees or similar college fees, then they don't have to pay the ones for the apprenticeship programs. But if they're doing one, they got to do the other. They can't discriminate. That's point number one. Point number two, most of the school systems in the state have a platform called Naviance, which is a platform where students explore their interests in careers, but also in education. It's aptitudes, it's exploration. Under the current practice in, I believe, all the jurisdictions, but I could be correct, but most of the jurisdictions, the information that students fill out with their permission is sold to colleges for colleges to be able to market to those students based on the information collected through the Naviance platform. This bill says that if a school system is allowing that kind of sharing of information with the colleges, they also need to share that information with the local workforce boards and with the State Department of Labor to be shared with employers and apprenticeship sponsors who want to recruit students. Again, it's level playing field between college recruitment and non-college recruitment. Third provision says, and I don't know how much of this goes on in your own schools and your community, it certainly does in mine, there's lots of visual promotion of college, lots of college pennants in the counseling office, lots of college pennants on teachers' walls about where they went to college. Do not have similar visibility for non-college career tracks, employers, apprenticeship programs. And so this third provision simply says, if you're going to have that kind of visual promotion of the college pathway, you need to have parallel promotion of the non-college pathways. One statistic that you'll hear about more from me and maybe other people during the session that came out of the Kirwan study is that in the last years they looked at, only 1/3 of Maryland high school graduates earned any degree by the age of 25. 2/3 had earned no degree by the age of 25, which means 2/3 of our students are making up life for themselves outside the college track. And they're important people too. The people they work for are employers and apprenticeship sponsors who are desperate for workers. And so this bill is part of an effort to try to right that balance, to help the kids, to help the employers, and help everybody. And I repeat, it was passed unanimously last year by this committee and by the Senate, and I would appreciate a favorable report.
Okay, questions for Senator Rosapep? We'll start with Vice Chair Kagan and then to Senator Washington after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Rosapep, always a pleasure to have you back
Thank
in
you.
E-Quad, as I call it.
E-Quad, okay, I'll go with that.
Because elections deserve their own E at the end of it. Just a question, with the Moore-Miller administration's commitment to a year of service, I'm wondering if that informs or modifies in any way your ideas about putting the word out on alternatives.
I didn't mention Governor Moore, and I should have. He is not endorsing this bill, so I don't imply that. But he certainly, in his inaugural, in his campaign, in his interviews since the inaugural, have embraced precisely this constituency, the left-out 2/3.
Right.
He said that in his inaugural. So I think his year of service fits into this. In fact, I've been having conversations with him and his staff about that. I think it can fit right in. This is a little bit more about the marketing and the access to information than it is about the actual jobs, but they all fit together.
So you think there would be nothing that would need to be modified in this bill?
Let me just think a minute. No, no, and no. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you, Senator. As always, I appreciate your endorsement and support of apprenticeships and alternatives to college. But the last, so again, I voted for this bill.
I appreciate it.
I support the idea. But what was raised by the last panel was, any of these studies, have we looked about the degree to which the decision to not pursue college had more to do with the price of college than a particular desire to not follow a college track? In other words,
No, I understand.
could it be that some of those who we may be encouraging to do this alternative track, it's really because they can't afford to do the 4-year college? So the young woman's testimony.
I understand. No, I was here and listening to it. I think the answer is yes. I mean, I think the increased cost of college is a big impediment. Right. So I think that's correct. Right. Nothing that I propose in this bill or proposed anywhere is to discourage anybody from going to college. Mm-hmm. It's simply to provide alternatives and make people aware of alternatives so they can make rational decisions. Right. Because it is in fact the case, and there are studies on this. And I say this with great respect. I represent College Park. I used to be on the Board of Regents, so I'm not anti-college. And colleges are businesses. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to recruit people to pay tuition. And so there is a reasonable amount in college marketing of getting people into their freshman year, and then they don't know how they're going to finance sophomore year. That happens a lot. I don't know the numbers in my head, but the number of folks who start college, they want to go to college, and they drop out, is, as everybody here in this committee knows, is very significant. Now, part of that is they change their mind on what they want to do with their life. Part of it is, they get a good job and they want to pursue that. There are all kinds of reasons. But part of it is the financing of college is a mishmash. And I think bills like the senators are great ones to help make that better. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Well, but they'd have to you would agree, I would hope that they'd have to happen at the same time, because unless we are fully advertising, for example, financial aid, making it a lot easier, that promoting this alternative will probably convince some people that otherwise would
Well,
want
but
to
that's already
pursue-
happening. As I say, two-thirds
It
aren't
is
getting
happening.
degrees by 25 anyway, right now.
Right,
So
but the reason for I just wondered if you were
Sure.
aware of a study, if the reason for they're not pursuing, what percentage of them said it had to do with the cost?
the short answer is, I'm sure there's studies out there. I haven't seen that specific one. But they go together, truthfully, is I literally talked to an associate of mine in Prince George's County who's on the board of one of our important institutions in Prince George's County. And we're talking about what's going on. And she said, I didn't like school. I didn't go to college. I started out in the federal government as a GS 1 or 2 or whatever. By the time I retired, I was a GS 14. It was a great career choice. And so there are a lot of people like that, too. There are a lot of people who love school, and there are a lot of people who don't like school so much. And so I think that's part of it. I think part of it is affordability. I think part of it also, frankly, and here I have pushed very hard on this committee, for those of you who are around, pushed very hard to make colleges more flexible in their delivery system. You're going to deal with these issues related to online education. I mean, to tell students they have to, College Park is a wonderful place. You got to leave your family, leave maybe your job someplace, and spend 4 years for 9 months of the year living someplace else is not really the most accessible way to help people get a college education, which is why University of Maryland Global Campus, why a lot of the community colleges, why University of Baltimore have moved in the online space to provide more accessibility. So I think there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle. That's all I'm saying.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest and support.
Okay, we'll go in the order people put their light up. Senator Lewis Young, then Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you stated in your presentation that by the age of 25, 2/3 of all high school graduates had not received a degree.
Yep.
Does that include community
Yes.
colleges and
Yes.
technical schools?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a degree.
Okay, just a degree. Part 2 of my question is, do you know if the House objection was based on policy, or was it just a timing issue? And if it was policy, what was their concern?
The short answer, and you would have more insight into this than I would, having recently been in the House. I was in the House a long time ago. Sometimes why the House does things with Senate bills is inscrutable. And I have tried to, I've tried to find out exactly, and I find a lot of this going on. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I'm not giving up.
Just thought if it was a policy issue, perhaps we could address
Well, I mean, you
it.
know what happens, and it happens over here too, to be fair to the House, is we got a lot of bills, and this doesn't fall in the category of a major administration bill. And so people say, I don't have time to figure it out, I don't have time to look at it. So I give them the benefit of the doubt, which is why I want to pass it again early in the session to give them a chance to understand it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Senator. I like the concept of this bill. I just have a practical question.
Yep.
These platforms the schools are using, are, and I haven't seen one yet. My daughter is a junior, but I assume I'll be seeing one soon.
Yep.
If the platforms are made by third-party vendors.
They are.
How easy is it for them to include the various other, industry certificates? I mean, I know, like, in cybersecurity, like, I'm trying to
No,
figure out how many there
they're
are.
different things.
Okay.
The Naviance platform, which is the primary one, is a tool where the student goes in and looks at videos about different things and answer questions about what they're interested in. It's the student in relation to the machine. The only interaction with outside entities is they sell the results of what the student information to colleges. So colleges say, okay, oh, this kid loves foreign languages. Oh, this kid loves biology. Therefore, they'll market to them to encourage them to go to their school. And all this bill is saying is that if the school system is allowing that to happen for colleges to market to them, it needs to allow it for employers and apprenticeship sponsors who register with the local workforce board to provide equal access for the student to be aware of the opportunities.
Okay, so just one follow-up, and maybe we can do this offline.
Sure.
I'm having trouble understanding on page 2, line 7, 8, or 9, what that actually means.
I don't have the bill in front of me. I apologize.
That's okay. A county board that uses a platform shall consider the pursuit of a vocational certificate, an industry certification, or apprenticeship program as the equivalent of pursuing a post-secondary education.
For the purposes of reimbursing for fees. Maybe there's an error in the drafting.
Potentially, I don't know. Let's take it offline.
But yeah, we'll take it offline. If we found a flaw in it, we should correct it. But you get the big picture.
I like the big picture.
And
I just don't
so
understand the
happy to
details.
make the bill better.
Okay, I don't see any other questions for the sponsor, so thank you, Senator
Thank you very much.
We had 4 witnesses signed up. Len Lucci could not stick around, so we've got 3 witnesses signed up favorable. Jennifer Cruz, is Ms. Cruz here? Okay, come on up. Grayson Wiggins and Ioana Stoika, and actually Brianna January. So we got 4 witnesses, 4 seats, and that's the all the folks who were signed up for Senate Bill 121. So why don't we go in the order I called you up. Jennifer Cruz, why don't you go first, and then we'll take it from there. And you've got 2.5 minutes.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cruz, and I'm a, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. So, yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cruz, and I'm a student at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and I am here to testify to support Senate Bill 121. As a student, I believe that every student should have access to the same resources to achieve a success regardless of what path they choose after high school. I remember being in my senior year of high school, not knowing what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted to have a career, make money, and be successful. And the only thing that was offered to me was a college track. Like, it was the only thing that was advertised to us. I was in an ACES program that the purpose of the program is to provide students like support to apply for colleges and look for scholarships. So I worked with my ACES coach to really figure out what I wanted to do after high school. And like I said, the only thing that was offered to me was college, and I didn't really see that as in my future because it's not. I'm a first-year generation graduate, and I was blessed enough to have an opportunity to have an internship after high school and really figure out what I wanted to do, and which was social work. And eventually I graduated. My friends, family, siblings, and cousins have graduated high school, and they didn't have the luxury of being able to have to explore college as an option for them. And I wish they had the opportunity when they were in high school to have apprenticeship programs explored to them, because many of them are in the fields that that they could have learned to have like skills and be able to learn, and have a successful career just like me. And, unfortunately, they didn't have that same path. They had to go on to look for jobs. And some of them now are exploring college. So I believe this bill doesn't stop students from exploring college. I think it just gives them an opportunity to have some type of success after high school.
Okay, you can finish your thought.
Okay, I strongly believe that this bill is essential in helping high school students have a greater chance at success in the future, and it will help ensure that they have necessary skills and experiences to pursue the career of their choice. Therefore, I urge the Maryland General Assembly to pass the Senate Bill 121, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll go through the full panel, and then we'll take question and answer. Why don't we go to next up, Grayson Wiggins. Grayson, you're up, 2.5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Grayson Wiggins on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. MMHA is a statewide trade association for landlords, essentially. They house a little over 500,000 people in the state. And so I'm seeing some furrowed brows. Why are you here? Well, we employ tens of thousands of people across the state as well. And just like every other industry in recent years, we had a hard time finding employees. And so what MMHA has done is they have partnered recently with Employ Prince George's in Prince George's County to provide a first of its kind in the state. We know it's the first of its kind in the region. We think it may be the first of its kind in the country, a partnership that facilitates careers in the housing industry. And the reason that's important is because one of the unique benefits of working in the housing industry is often reduced price or even free housing. And so you get full benefits, a very good wage, and then you also receive discounted housing. We have a maintenance side training program and most recently a leasing side training program where we recruit, train, and place participants at no cost to the participant. It's really a exciting program. The leasing side just launched 2 weeks ago in Prince George's County. They had a significant number of applicants for a small cohort, the first cohort, but they do expect to have 4 cohorts this year, and we think this bill will help get the word out about the program and others like it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stoika, you're next up, 2.5 minutes, and then we'll close up with Brianna. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. Many thanks to Senator Rosa Pepp from wonderful District 21, where I reside, for introducing this important bill. My name is Ioana Stoica, and I'm a policy advocate for the Job Opportunities Task Force, JOTF. We are a nonprofit agency that advocates for better skills training, and wages for low-income workers. We strongly support this bill as a means of providing high school students the opportunity to learn about and access apprenticeship programs. In the state of Maryland, like Senator Rosa Pepp said, 64% of individuals at the age of 25 do not have a college degree, and about 24% of all Marylanders of all ages have a high school diploma as their highest level of educational attainment. Apprenticeship provides these individuals a pathway to employment and creates a pathway to higher wage work for students without a college degree. JOTF, my organization, we provide pre-apprenticeship workforce training in plumbing, carpentry, and electrical, and employment in these skills is growing. The 10-year projected growth for electricians is 14%, for plumbers is 12%, and for carpenters is 6%. These professions provide good wages and oftentimes benefits that are able to support individuals and their families. In Maryland, on average, wages are about $32 per hour for electricians and for plumbers, as an example, which is well above the minimum wage. We believe that high schools should serve all students, regardless of their interest or ability to pursue a higher education. Senate Bill 121 would offer equitable opportunities to learn about alternative career pathways and subsidize the cost of assessments for vocational certifications. Also, this bill would be good not only for students who wish to enter gainful employment, but would also benefit employers who are facing at the moment severe shortages in the trades and are facing severe shortages of qualified applicants. We urge a favorable report on this bill. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Brianna January from Mako. We'll play cleanup, and then we'll open up to Q&A.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, esteemed committee members. Brianna January with the Maryland Association of Counties, also known as MACO, here in strong support of SB 121. And I'll note that it's such a pleasure for me to be here today in the newly formed committee and for my very first bill hearing of the session. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. You do have my written testimony, so I'll be brief. The bill sponsor did a great job of explaining the need for SB 121 and also why we must support our students that are pursuing alternatives to college education. I will also note that I don't need to explain to this committee why doing so is critical to Maryland's modern workforce and our support and development of it. But what I will say is that SB 121 is simply another tool in our toolbox for supporting these students, and it greatly aligns with the priorities of the blueprint as well as with the work that counties are already doing in this area. Committee members, as a matter of fact, in many of your counties and the city of Baltimore, a lot of them are already partnering with our local community colleges, our local workforce development boards, and even nonprofits to pursue this kind of education and to support Maryland students. And so SB 121 is truly a nice complement to that work that we're already doing at the local level. With that, I'll give you back a majority of your time and urge a favorable report on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to the whole panel. Any questions for any of the witnesses? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 121. Thank you. We are going to now move to Senate Bill 31, Senator Carter. And this will be our first experimentation with some virtual testimony, I believe. So, Senator Carter, why don't you lead off? I don't see a sponsor panel necessarily.
Good afternoon,
yeah.
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and all members of the committee. I would name you, but I won't.
Okay.
But I always thought it was interesting here how we only mention the chair and the vice chair, and everybody else I don't need your support. So don't hold it against me.
Hey, Senator Carter, before you do it, you actually did designate Christina Duncan Evans as your sponsor panelist. So is Christina Duncan Evans there? Okay, there you go. Yes. And so with that, back to you with your unlimited time to present Senate Bill 31.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I have notes that I have 3 members of my sponsor panel.
Okay.
Maybe the information wasn't conveyed, but they're here. Could I bring them up?
Absolutely. Who are we talking about?
Nathan Farrell.
Okay. And who else?
And Broderick Pitts.
Okay, so Mr. Pitts and Mr. Farrell, you are now officially part of the sponsor panel, whether you wanted to be or not. So back to you, Senator Carter, unlimited time, and then everybody else will get 2.5 minutes. So, Senator Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I'm very excited to be here, especially as I look around and see members here that have somehow managed to abscond from my committee. One day I hope to be as masterful as some of you. We often say so many times here, don't fall in love with your bills. Let me tell you, that lesson has been a theme of my entire career. As I was sitting here in the audience, and I hope I wasn't being rude, but my staff legislative director pointed out an article that he Googled and found from 2004 from the Baltimore Sun to talk about how I, as a first-time legislator, sponsored a bill for an elected school board, and the Baltimore Sun said an elected school board might provide accountability. Well, my proposal today is a little different, and we've actually, 20 years later, come a little far because we now, some years ago, managed to get to this level where we have 2 elected members. And my proposal today is a minor expansion upon that I think makes for a more democratic board that represents the people and the students more comprehensively and thoroughly than today's board does. It's just an improvement. So this bill, first of all, is a local bill, and last year it passed both the delegation in both chambers as well as the entire Senate chamber and the House. It simply was vetoed by the former governor, and we didn't override the veto. So I'd certainly ask for the support, and I believe you can expect a delegation letter. The bill today as introduced is in the same exact form as how it passed last year. It does 2 things. It basically expands the voting power of student members, and it forms a task force to study compensation. I learned in the process of preparing for this bill last year that Baltimore City is only one of only 2 jurisdictions that doesn't currently provide any compensation. This is simply a task force to study the compensation. It doesn't call for compensation. And the other, the expansion of the school board member, the school board members' voting rights or voting powers is also something that was much debated within our delegation last year. And there were amendments proposed, and we accepted those amendments. And so there is limited voting for the student when it comes to some HR personnel matters under the bill. So I also want to say that my panel consists of teachers, members of the Votes Coalition. They are a collective of different stakeholders that formed something called the Votes Coalition a couple of years ago, and they've been working vigilantly to come up with reasonable and best plans and practices. And so this bill comes to you after much input, much debate, much real thought. With that, I don't think that I need to say too much because I think you should hear from the panel that we have here. But again, it does two things. It expands voting rights of a student member, and it also creates a task force to study the compensation. And 20 years later, we still aren't where my proposal was 20 years ago with, more members of an elected board, but baby steps, Mr. Chair. I hope to have your support, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Senator Carter before we go to her sponsor panel? Okay, seeing none. Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for the sponsor of the bill. Senator Carter, the Senate passed this bill unanimously, 46-0, but the House, it was a much more divided vote, 94-38. And then, as you mentioned, Governor Hogan vetoed it. Do you want to speak to anything about what the House was concerned about? You said the bill is identical, so do we? Yeah.
I'm not 100% certain, but and certainly my panel may remember it differently. I believe the bill passed the House, and then the Senate made the amendments, which then made the bill more palatable, and that's how it passed the Senate. So I will say that last year, my recollection is that the administration, the school board, was not initially in favor of the bill. We sat together and discussed it, and I believe it was one member of our delegation, Senator Hayes, that proposed an amendment that was a compromise, and that's where we were able to come with the unanimous support. I believe that is what happened, that it's quite possible that the version that passed the House was not the compromise version that the Senate passed, but maybe not. If you're shaking your head, so maybe that wasn't it. Well, maybe we're just smarter than the House. I don't know.
But I defer to the sponsor, who has probably spent a lot more time on this bill than I have. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's, why don't we start with Senator Carter, you handed it.
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Farrell. Mr. Farrell, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Farrell, and I'm a Baltimore City schools teacher, District 44A resident. And I'm speaking today to give my full support of Senate Bill 31. I also submitted written testimony, more comprehensive testimony I hope the committee will review. In addition to being a Spanish teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools, I also work closely with students to organize around their needs and amplify their voices. I work with the Associated Student Congress of Baltimore City. I've supervised youth works programs in the past, and I will again this summer through the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. I support the Planned Parenthood Maryland Peer Educator Program, and most important and really closest to my heart is my experience as a perennial summer school educator, where I serve transitional age youth working to achieve their high school diplomas before they age out of the public school system. And too often, students who are more affluent or better connected or have access, these students will have access to leadership opportunities. This bill, in addition to improving the voting rights or expanding the voting rights of the student commissioner, also in the study looks at adding a second seat of a student member. And that second seat can help ensure that marginalized students, such as transitional age youth that I serve, are able to work with a fellow student member on the board to better represent students who are certainly in non-traditional situations. Having a second seat on the board would allow for students who are experiencing homelessness, which affects our students in Baltimore City, for example. Students who are recent immigrants, we're seeing increases in that. ESL students, students with disabilities, and of course, again, the transitional age youth, to have a voice about the issues that affect them and their particular communities. And it's telling that the current board structure does not allow student members of the board voting rights or the ability to participate in executive sessions, for example. And in order to transition away from this superficial and essentially performative board structure, we really must affirm the value of our young people and that of the entire enterprise of public education, and to treat student members as full members of the board with all rights and privileges as any other commissioner on the board. And as an organizational member of the Votes Coalition, as referenced by Senator Carter, this bill is already it's a significant compromise. We met with members of the school board and the mayor's office over multiple years, the Votes Coalition has, and we've engaged in good faith discussions, even after pulling the bill 2 sessions ago that would have dramatically restructured the board. And I'll finish, thank you. And their concerns and ideas were incorporated into this legislation to ensure that we can move towards a more democratic, transparent, and youth-centric and effective board. For these reasons, I respectfully urge that this committee issues a favorable report on Senate Bill 31 without amendments, and I thank you.
Okay, we'll next go to Mr. Pitts. Next up, 2.5 minutes.
Greetings and thank you, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan. My name is Rick Pitts. and all of the wonderful distinguished members of this committee, so thank y'all for having us. My name is Rick Pitts. I represent Organizing Black. I'm a 40th District resident, lifetime, and I am here today representing Organizing Black and Voices Towards an Elected School Board, the coalition that came together with our wonderful senator to get this done. And in addition to the added responsibility and voting rights of the student member of the board, it would be wonderful to have all of our 6 through 12 students be able to participate in the election process. Right now, that is not the case. There's a very limited number based on the school you attend and the activities that are available at the school for you to be able to participate in the voting process. We would love for all of our youth to have a voice, be heard, and be represented in those spaces. This bill not only seeks to bridge the divide between our youth and the people who make the decisions for them, but it also can help bridge the divide between the community and the people who make the decisions for it by allowing the investigation of payment or compensation for school board members. Right now, there are a lot of people who would love to participate in this process who are not afforded the opportunity because of lack of resources and time being a resource. So if I have to take off of work, or if I have to find a way to make it there with my vehicle that is probably not in the best condition right now, I might have a hard time making the commitment to be on the school board. So if we are allowing for a more democratic process and allowing for more people in our community to be a part of this process, I believe we're making some real progress. As stated, this bill has been negotiated and some things taken out, some things added in over the last couple years, so it would be wonderful if we could finally get it through and pass the governor's desk. And with all of this, I urge that this committee move forward with the bill as is with no further amendments, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll go to Christina Duncan Evans, and then we'll open up to questions of the sponsor panel.
Greetings, Chair Feldman. Greetings, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and all members of the committee. My name is Christina Duncan Evans. I'm a library media specialist, a social studies teacher, and I'm representing the Baltimore Teachers Union. The Baltimore Teachers Union supports Senate Bill 31, which would establish that the student member of the Board of School Commissioners is elected by all students in secondary school in Baltimore City, and expand the topics that the student member of the board is allowed to vote on, as well as establishing a task force to study compensation for the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners and the possibility of adding a second student member to the board. The Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners is charged with approving the annual budget, hiring, evaluating, and terminating the district CEO, negotiating the district's collective bargaining agreements, opening and closing schools, setting priorities for school improvement, and setting the school district's policies. Our students who are directly impacted by all of these topics deserve a full voice in how policies are determined and how priorities are set. Senate Bill 31 seeks to expand the student member of the board's voting rights to topics previously restricted, including capital and operating budgets, school closings, reopenings and boundaries, and student disciplinary matters. We support expanded student voting rights as a recognition that students who are directly impacted by all aspects of board governance deserve a say in how money is spent and how school resources are distributed to promote student success. We further believe that a voting process for the student member of the board involving many more students is a much-needed improvement. The current process limits the selection of the student member of the board to students who are elected representatives of their school's student government association, and a direct election provides a simpler mechanism for more students to get involved with the decision-making process. Adding another student member of the board, as the task force would study, is an important step to ensuring that youth voices are heard meaningfully rather than tokenized. An additional student commissioner could provide more support and collaboration opportunities to the current student member of the board and provide a broader and more diverse set of experiences and representation, which can help the board reach decisions more equitably. The BTU urges a favorable report on Senate Bill 31. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for any of the panelists? Senator Lewis Young?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a really fundamental question. I'm not sure I understand why this isn't a local delegation bill as opposed to a statewide bill.
So it is a local bill. I'm sorry, Senator, it's a local bill, but, and the delegation will be voting on it once we meet and vote on bills for this session, but we haven't done it yet this year. But once it's a local bill, once the delegation takes a position, we'll send a letter to the committee.
Okay, I was confused about that because I always thought these issues were delegation issues. Thanks.
Okay, Senator Watson, and then we'll go back over to Senator Brooks.
It was pre-filed, I think, so it's beat the delegation's action.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Carter, for this bill. A couple questions. One is, what is the primary purpose of a student board member?
The primary purpose of the student board member is to provide representation from, the most impacted persons in the education system, which are the students.
So I think the most important job for a student board member is to graduate. And it looks like, and I've seen these bills many times before, that you're trying to turn students into politicians when they don't need to be. They need to be focused on school and not be put in a position where they can be manipulated by any party, any partisan interest, but focus on school and their education, still providing or still being able to receive a benefit, understanding what leadership looks like, feels like, and being able to articulate what's going on to their colleagues. But to have a high schooler make decisions, capital and operating budgets, we're fighting like hell to make sure they have some financial literacy. To have decisions based on collective bargaining is
Actually, collective bargaining is out of the decision-making for the students.
You've taken that out.
Well, it's not in this bill. It might have been in the bill before you. That should not be a part of this bill.
That is
It
not
was
a
the
part.
original bill.
Okay, okay. So this bill seeks to, when you say full voting rights, just tell me once again what those pieces are.
Basically, the student member of the current board, and should the decision be made by the task force to recommend and then it be adopted that there's a second member, then any student members would have full voting rights with the exception of personal matters, I believe, including collective bargaining issues. And so let me just, first of all, I would like for one of the other members of the panel to elaborate more on that, because like I always believe those persons that are most impacted are in best position to speak for themselves. But I can just tell you that one of the reasons I think it's critically important, so we're not here to litigate whether students should be on boards, because they're on boards all over the place, and I think Montgomery County is an example where they have full voting rights. But the issue is that if we are going to develop young people into a sense of responsibility and into a sense of understanding these kinds of decisions, making these kinds of decisions, the politics around these kinds of decisions. It's actually a fantastic experience for any member that gets elected to the board. So we're talking about one now and ostensibly two students that would be elected from the full collective of eligible student voters to put them on the board.
I mean,
we're not talking about like a whole bunch of students that are taken away from the classroom.
It sounds easy, but it is not. It's very complicated because what you're doing is changing the balance of power on a school board. That's what ultimately is going to happen. And I'm telling you, I believe these folks will be manipulated the same way we have lobbyists coming to ask us to support an opinion or what have you. They're going to go through the same thing, and there's no getting around it. It is what it is. But my final question is, has your superintendent supported this?
Oh, the school CEO? Well,
Yes.
I haven't, one of you all may know whether she's weighed in or not, but the issue to me is that our delegation supports it, our board representation supports it, our teachers union supports it, our Votes Coalition support it. To be quite honest, maybe somebody else on the panel knows whether she's weighed in. I really don't know.
The Board of School Commissioners supports this. The Baltimore City Board.
I'm asking specifically about the superintendent.
Hey, can I just say, if you're going to testify, you got to get that mic in front of you because this is being beamed out there, so.
Your superintendent, do they support it?
My understanding is that the Board of School Commissioners takes positions on bills and that the superintendent defers to the board's position when it comes to matters of legislation. That might be incorrect, though. I apologize if it is.
No, that sounds right. Sometimes superintendents weigh in, sometimes they don't. I was just curious. Thank you, Senator Carr.
We'll go to Senator Brooks next.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Senator. Just a quick question. I'm looking at it from a legal perspective. Anytime you engage in a contract or something of that nature, then you have to be the age of majority. And I think some kids could be age 17 and a senior in high school. The other part to that too is that, as we all know, the neurocortex doesn't fully develop until you're 25. That's the ability to make reasonable, sound judgments. So has any of that been taken into consideration?
I think a lot of things, I don't want to keep answering for everyone if they have a better answer than I do, again, but I think a lot of things have been taken into consideration given the amount of time and the work that's gone into this. But I do think that my larger, broader answer to your question is that I've said many times that Maryland is schizophrenic in how it treats children generally. On one hand, we say you can't contract and you can't marry, but on the other hand, we say you can be automatically charged as an adult in the criminal justice system. So we do say that you can't contract, but they're not entering into contracts, and they'd just be taking votes on issues before the board, and they would exclude any personnel matters or human resources matters and collective bargaining. So I think that's all stuff that was taken into account. But I do think we can't just expect adults to just drop into the age of majority and know how to lead and know how to become productive and valuable members of boards. We have to grow people into that, and this is one excellent way I think that we have to do it.
Okay. Also, but you said, but the part about collective bargaining and capital and operating budgets, that is not in the bill.
Well, no, collective bargaining is out, but budgets, voting on budgets is still in, to my understanding.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Chair.
Listen, can I have a quick addendum? Listen, it's not just young people that don't understand budgets. I and many people of this very body probably every year struggle with those, that aren't on the budget committee, struggle to understand that. But, if I weren't put in a situation to have to figure it out, I may never do it. So I actually just think this is a great opportunity for young people.
Yeah, I was just looking at it from the legal aspect of it, engaging in a contract, so. Thank you.
We're going to go to Senator Gallion, and then we'll go to Senator Washington, and then Senator Hester. And we actually have some virtual witnesses. We're going to have to experiment the new virtual testimony world here in a minute. But Senator Gallion.
Mr. Chair,
local courtesy is a big deal, and that's why some of us may vote for certain bills that maybe we're not the most comfortable with, but, the local courtesy pulls a lot of weight. With that being said, if it's something that's groundbreaking and new and they're not doing it anywhere else, we kind of take a finer look at that, and maybe it gives us some justification on how we vote a certain way. Is there anywhere else in the state where the student members can vote on everything?
I'm sorry, my legislative director, who has been admonished that he's not testifying, has just told me Anne Arundel County and Montgomery County, and then I think that also there are places that have maybe hybrids as well. You may speak to that. Yeah, Mr. Farrell, since you can pull up this.
I know some counties, like the student member can vote, but if there's a tie, they can't be the deciding vote. So I was just curious if other places in the state, they have total free votes on every issue that's going to come in front of them. And if we don't know, we can do a little research to find out.
Yeah, we can get that, and Montgomery County, as was noted, has pretty broad power for its student member, and Anne Arundel, yeah. Senator Washington, and then we'll go down the line.
Again, thank you so much, Senator, for this bill. Look forward to voting for it and for our delegation and the city of Baltimore to make decisions about how young people can be represented. I just wanted to ask you a question. Individuals can run for the House of Delegates at the age of 21, correct?
I believe so.
Yes, and they can serve in the military without a parent's permission at the age of 18, and in some cases.
And smoke.
And smoke, and there's a number of things. Is there, in any of the situations across the state, have you gotten any information that the student board members have failed their classes, have not been able to graduate?
No.
Have there been any examples where the students who are the student members have received accolades and letters of representation or recommendation for college or jobs because of their service?
No.
Yes, well,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I apologize.
You weren't listening.
I was not listening to you, Senator Washington.
So the question, I guess my question is that overall, we're interested in the welfare of young people and that their experiences, their college, that their high school or K through 12 experiences prepares them for jobs, provides them with social development opportunities. Would you say that this opportunity would provide a Baltimore City youth the same opportunities to explore those as their peers in Montgomery County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County? In fact, all of the jurisdictions except one.
Without a doubt, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none. We've got one other, okay, thank you. I think we're good for this panel. We've got one other person signed up favorable in person to testify favorable, Latoya Nettles. Is Latoya Nettles here? And normally I would take favorable with amendment separately, but we have one more in person, favorable with amendment, Dewana Starrett, and then we've got 4 virtual favorable. So why don't we keep the in-person folks here, and then we'll go to the virtual. So let's start with Latoya Nettles. You're signed up favorable in person, and then we've got Dewana Starrett favorable with an amendment in person, and then we'll go to the virtual testimony. So it's all yours. You've got 2.5 minutes, Ms. Nettles.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Latoya Nettles. I am a District 41 resident, and I am currently serving as the Arrows Parent Organizer. That is the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools. I'm also a member of the Teachers Democracy Project and a member of Communities United. I am also a minister in my community, a special needs and family advocate, and a Baltimore City educator. I'm writing to give my full support of Senate Bill 31. I have personally spoken with our youth about their concerns in our city's education education system. The students often, if not always, have the same concerns that the staff and parents have. During my time as an educator and now as an advocate, I have learned that their concerns include, but are not limited to, safety in schools, understaffed schools, resources for underserved communities, and mental health awareness. Are these not the concerns that are discussed every day across our country? We are always boasting about our students, how special and bright they are, and how excited we are for this generation of leaders. It is due time for our youth to have voting privileges and access to the decisions that affect them. Their insight into their education is monumental for our future success. I've also attended the Center for Popular Democracy Conference in New Orleans, where I witnessed a youth-led organization train adults and other youth on youth activism. Their subject was how to be safe when youth are involved during protests and how to manage social networks safely. I was in awe of their maturity and knowledge of the subject, and none of them were over 25. The youth will lead the way to a brighter future, and we should be honored to be witness. Serving on the school board is a demanding position that is unpaid. This limits the candidate pool to individuals who can afford their time to meetings that are often during the working day, people who have flexible work schedules, daily childcare, and more resources. Unfortunately, these resources are not always available to our families and our communities. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on SB 31 without amendments. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Nettles? Okay, seeing none, we're now going to go to our favorable with amendment witness in person, Dwana Sterrett. Ms. Sterrett?
Thank you, Chairman Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee. I said it right this time. I'm Dwana Sterrett, the Director of Legislative and Government Affairs for the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. So I want to first say that the board fully does support Senate Bill 31, and the CEO is following the board's lead on this issue. What I have as an amendment that I spoke to the sponsor about is not about the merits of the bill, but about exactly what a full term means for the appointed board members. As you know, we have 9 appointed board members and 2 citywide elected members. And currently, board members that are appointed are allowed to serve 2 full 3-year terms. The issue that we are having is that some of these terms have been truncated because the mayor has 60 days after the completion of a person's term to appoint a new person. And many times the new appointment has occurred sometimes 1 to 2 years after the start of the term. So this means, for example, what has happened is if a person was supposed to be appointed July of 2020, we may not have an appointment until August of 2021. Therefore, that person loses that that year in service. So what the board would like to do is have an amendment where if a person is appointed 1 year after the start of the term, that they are allowed to serve the remainder of that term, and then the authority to be eligible to be appointed for another 2 3-year terms. And so with that, members of the committee, that's we urge a favorable report.
Okay, any questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony. And so on this bill, what we have left are 4 witnesses signed up virtually. And we're going to start, and I'm going to tell everybody who's on there virtually that you've got to turn on your video and your audio. This is our first experiment here. Jocelyn Providence, you're going to be the very first virtual witness in the history of this committee. Ms. Providence, are you there? Okay. Jocelyn Providence, going once. She's here? Okay. And you've got to put on your video and your audio. Okay,
Hello,
there you
can
are.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see
Okay,
you.
hi.
And
Great. I'm literally at a meeting right now with students at Baltimore School of the Arts. So thank you. I'm gonna go
okay,
into
welcome to Virtual Testimony World. So you've got, Ms. Providence, you've got, starting right now, you've got 2.5 minutes to make your case favorable on this bill.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, members of the Senate, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee. My name is Jocelyn Providence. I'm a District 45 resident, and I support this Senate bill as is with no amendments. I am currently in my 9th year teaching in Baltimore City Public Schools, and I continue to be motivated and inspired by our students. Our students are some of the most hardworking and dedicated individuals I know. They are reflective, constantly readjusting to what is going on around them, especially now more than ever. It is only right that they are given equal opportunity and access to full voting rights in the decision-making in policies, budgets, and procedures that they are the most directly impacted by. If we want to have equitable access to the role of student board commissioner also, we must establish a commission to research and make recommendations of board member compensation. So City Schools has a $1.6 billion budget for fiscal year 2023. While we don't know what the Compensation Commission will recommend, even with an expanded board and above state average compensation, this would only cost the district approximately $200,000, or less than 1% of their total budget. Finally, I want to say, what does it say to our students, staff, and community if we're not willing to invest in our students, invest in their development, like many people have already stated? We met with the school board commissioners, with the mayor's office in good faith for the past couple of years. So this bill is an extreme compromise. So I'm also happy to hear that other people continue to be on board with this. We're here because the previous governor vetoed this bill. We hope that this bill will get through because this is what our students and our community deserve. They deserve to have equal access and equitable access to be able to represent their community, and students deserve to feel supported and feel like their voice and their decision, go ahead, dear, sorry. Their voice and their decision matter in how the school board functions and is controlled. You're okay. Thank you. And so for all these reasons, I respectfully urge you and the committee to issue a favorable report without amendments on the Senate bill. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you for your testimonies. Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Providence, thank you for your 9 years of teaching in our public schools. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your passion. And thank you for what you do after hours, including testifying here and bringing your perspective. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Providence? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We're going to go next.
Okay. Oh, and I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I also submitted written testimony, so I give more details there too. Apologies for the interruption.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Next up, we've got Todd Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, again, you've got to turn on your video and your audio for us to see you and hear you. We will hopefully, there you are. Thank you okay, Todd Reynolds is up next. Todd.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Reynolds, we can see you, we can hear you. You've got 2.5 minutes starting now.
Thank you so much, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan. My name is Todd Reynolds. I am the political coordinator for the American Federation of Teachers in Maryland. It's a 20,000 member state federation for a number of education and public employee unions in the state, including the Baltimore Teachers Union. I'm also a Baltimore City resident, and maybe about a half hour ago, I just picked up my kindergarten daughter. She is a Baltimore City public school student. On behalf of the AFT Maryland, we ask for a favorable report without amendments to SB 31. We submitted written testimony. I just want to give some of the highlights. We believe that the most successful public school systems are, like all democratic institutions, are those that actively invite stakeholders to have a choice in the decision making. This bill strives to achieve these goals in two ways. Primarily, it allows student members to vote on budgets, school closings, which is very important in Baltimore City, reopenings, and local school boundaries, as well as to participate in executive sessions that are supposedly not subject to the open meetings law. Finally, it increases the likelihood of real, meaningful participation in school governance by the broader Baltimore City community by forming a work group to study the potential to compensate school board members for their work on the board. This is important because currently Baltimore City is one of only 2 jurisdictions in the state that does not compensate school board members for their work. The result of that is far too many residents who may be good candidates for the school board just don't have the time or resources to commit to the work that needs to be done to effectively govern our city school system. For these reasons, AFT Maryland calls for a favorable report without amendments to SB 31. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Reynolds? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Reynolds. We're going to next go to Franca Muller. Ms. Muller, I saw you there.
Everyone.
Okay, good to see you. Again, you've got 2.5 minutes starting now, okay?
Thank Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Franca Mueller-Paz. I'm a teacher of 13 years and an educator in Baltimore City for the last 10, and a member of District 45 in Baltimore City. And I want to give my full support to SB 31. As an advisor for the high school student SOMOS, students organizing a multicultural open society, I want to share some of what these students had to say. These are students who have fought to open access for ESOL students to our highly selective schools in our school district, expanded internet for over 1 million people nationwide, and met with Vice President Kamala Harris to discuss their ideas around how to improve internet access in the United States. Here's what one student member had to say. This is Learnelis, a 12th grader at Somos. A student member of the board would be able to expose the mental health perspective of what a student faces, the academic struggles, and how the methods of teaching affect us as students. Student board members will also be able to collect information from actual students and receive direct feedback from decisions made from a higher level. The school board members haven't been in high school for how long? Also, in response to Senator Ron Watson, I understand that students already have a lot on their plate, but because of those same reasons, this is why student board members are needed, so they can advocate on how some of these decisions directly affect their lives. Samreen, a SOMOS graduate and first-year student at Johns Hopkins, also wanted to share, this is the time to give students a platform to open up and give their input in a system that directly impacts the rest of their lives. This is the foundational training, and they need to have a say in it. Another student, Karina, 11th grader and SOMOS member, says, a student member can offer perspective on current school events that may actually be helpful when deliberating on important decisions. Cheyenne, another 12th grader, shared, I just feel like a student who is able to give firsthand perspective that a teacher, staff member might not be able to see is going to be good to include all perspectives. Maggie, another student SOMOS member, shared, students understand what they need and some adults don't acknowledge or even understand that. Student perspectives would add a voice for all students so that our education can be a lot more enjoyable. As high school students, if we are expected to make decisions for our own future, why can't we have our say in our current education? To close, it is the students that see the conditions of their cafeterias, the classrooms. They are the ones who must learn in extreme heat or cold. They see how decisions to execute system-wide programs excel or fall short. They are the ones who have to play into district fields or be denied because of their conditions. Students understand what is urgent because they live that reality every day. For those reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on SB 31. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness, Ms. Mueller? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And the final witness on this bill is Blanca Rosales. Ms. Rosales, are you there? Turn on your video, your audio. Okay, there you go. Good to see you. We can hear you. We can see you. You've got 2.5 minutes to testify. Favorable.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, members of the Senate Education and the Energy Environment Committee. My name is Blanca Rosales. I'm a Baltimore City College student as well as SOMOS student organizer, and I'm a Baltimore resident. I support SB 31 to give students member of the board expanded voting rights and the ability to participate in closed executive sessions, to alter the process by which those students are chosen to be more democratic, and to establish a commission to research and make recommendations on a board member compensation and adding second student member of the board. As a student, it has not been easy at all coming from a pandemic. There has not been any option but to keep moving forward. However, that doesn't mean that everything is now fixed. There's a huge problem with students' mental health. It's not being prioritized. As a SOMOS student organizer, I learned about the many schools who don't have enough resources, such as counselors and psychologists. During January 2021, students and teachers were being asked to return to their normal classes in the middle of a pandemic without the minimum resources that schools should provide, such as the nurse during all school hours. SOMOS organized a student strike for the school board to agree to our demands. And later on in December 2021, a petition was made to return to virtual learning due to the increased amount of COVID cases around the schools. With 1,601 signatures were made, yet nothing was done. There's also a huge issue about our school safety, and nothing is being done. Outsiders can access to school zone and shoot students, and after these tragic events, and students are asked to go back to school as usual after 2 days. It has become so normalized that no one talks about it. It is not safe anymore, and students are being asked to keep going to school, yet nothing is being done to ensure student safety. And I would also like to add 2 testimonies from my Somos teammates, coming one from Tristan, who said a student's representative will give valuable insight and feedback on how certain decisions would affect students. Many decisions seem to be made without accounting for how students will be affected or how they would respond. And a direct response from Maggie, also a Somos member, to the idea that a person in the school board, a student in the school board can be manipulated. And I quote, she says, I think it's just a prime example of how people are using their power to control students. If anything, he's the manipulator. There is no one better to represent students better than themselves. And we said this over and over again. All students should have a say into what goes on into our education system. Finally, for these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on SB 0031. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the witness, Ms. Rosales? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 3031. And we're going to now move to the final bill for today, Senator Lamb, Senate Bill 120. So, Senator Lamb, why don't you come up here? We've got a couple of witnesses favorable, but I don't think they're part of any designated panel of yours. They've just signed up in person favorable. I don't know if you know who they are or you want them up here, but in any event, it's all, you've got unlimited time and to present the bill, Senate Bill 120.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's good to be back to present this bill. This is Senate Bill 120, for the record, Clarence Lamb, Senator in District 12. Members who were on this committee last year may recall this bill from then. It did pass the House unanimously, but ran out of time in the Senate. And the purpose of the bill is to require that each county board of education adopt and implement guidelines that reduce the risk of anaphylactic food allergies for Maryland public school students. In 2009, the Maryland State Department of Education and the Department of Health issued voluntary guidance on food allergies in schools, anticipating that school districts would develop their own guidelines. Currently, over half of Maryland's 25 public school districts, however, are missing food allergy policies on their websites, and several are also missing individual food item allergy information as well. Among districts that do have food allergy policy information, the details vary greatly, and thus really supporting the need for clear and uniform guidelines. Under this bill, each county board would adopt and implement guidelines in accordance with MSDE's health services guidelines to reduce the risk of exposure to anaphylactic causative agents in classrooms and common areas. To clarify, and because it's a medical term, an anaphylactic allergy means a food allergy that causes severe systemic reaction resulting in collapse of the circulatory system or shock, which could be fatal. The major food allergens include milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soybeans, and sesame, and are named in the bill. At a minimum, the guidelines must require that the roles and responsibilities of administrators, healthcare staff, and school employees in regards to protecting students with major allergies from exposure while in school or participating in school activities. This includes establishing procedures for self-administration of medication or for an employee to respond in good faith to an anaphylactic reaction of a child. Implementing these guidelines will also emphasize greater communication and collaboration between school staff, students, and parents. This includes the school notifying parents and students of the specific measures it is taking to avoid exposure to allergens. Each public school will also develop a system to disclose foods served in the school and ensure that it posts a list of all the foods being served and any major food allergens contained in the food in the cafeteria each day. As structured, the bill would reduce the risk of anaphylaxis in the most vulnerable population of our communities, our children, especially those who may not be able to identify and avoid all sources of allergens. There are approximately 27,500 Maryland public school students with life-threatening food allergies, so not an insignificant number. Additionally, students from these marginalized communities tend to go underdiagnosed for food allergies. And while there is no cure for food allergies itself, prevention is the #1 way that we can protect students, and that's what this bill does by trying to put into statute specific requirements to prevent students from going into anaphylactic shock and ensuring that we have a safe and healthy school environment for those who are most at risk. Having previously been on this committee, I recognize there's a general reluctance to place requirements on our local school systems, but I believe in this instance, in this limited circumstance, it is important. Because of the serious harm that can come to a student experiencing anaphylaxis, including potential airway blockage and also potential death, it is necessary and important that we ensure that all counties are following best practices when it comes to preventing these types of exposures. Several years ago, the General Assembly required all schools to store and maintain EpiPens, which many of you are probably familiar with. And while these EpiPens are important life-saving tools, we believe that the requirements of this bill will help prevent students from going into anaphylaxis in the first place, hopefully precluding the need for these EpiPens, the use of these EpiPens, and a rescue drug that are similar to that. Additionally, the fiscal note states that school systems can comply with this bill using current resources, so there's virtually no cost and minimal burden, and hopefully we believe this will help improve the health and safety of the students. We also have heard that there is we had met with the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, MABE, and they were communicating with us about revising some of the timing of the bill. We are certainly open to that, so that may be an amendment that we'll be presenting to the committee shortly. With that, let me wrap up and happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Senator Lamb, the sponsor, Vice Chair Kagan?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lamb. Good to have you back in E-Quad here. So it looks like the way I read the bill, the school boards, the school systems, they're going to have to put on their website to notify people. They're going to have a policy. They're going to have all that stuff. And you do list the possible allergens, but there's nothing in here that is actually, I mean, including for field trips and all that, but there's nothing that's going to say that another student can't bring a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or have milk or wheat or soybeans or sesame or something in their own lunch or on the bus that brings folks to school or on a field trip or something. How much are we actually protecting kids if the school system is doing what they're doing, but other students are doing what other students do?
Right, so the intention is not to limit what kids generally can bring into the schools, because, I think parents and kids want to make their own decisions as to what they can bring in for school lunches and such. But in the bill itself, there are provisions to say that the school should have a plan, if needed, to designate an allergen-free area. That could be part of the cafeteria, that could be some space that's food-free, for example. That's all spelled out here in the bill as a requirement. And that's really left up to the local school system and also that local school to figure out how to designate that area. This bill just states that they need to have a policy in place to be able to kick that into action if there's someone at that school who has these types of allergies.
So just to follow up on one aspect, I saw the food-free space and all that. How do you do that when all the kids are on the same school bus or all the kids are on the same transportation system to go on a field trip or something? Would you envision a separate method of transportation, or that the parent or guardian would have to, take care of their own child or children?
Right, I don't think that's the case. I think this is where they would have a policy for the field trips, for example, where they may not be eating on the bus. Eating on the bus is probably generally a bad idea anyway because of the choking risk and whatnot. And so, I think the policy might state, this is, for example, along the lines of that the meals that the students are bringing with them on that field trip, if they're bringing their own and it's not provided by the trip itself, would have to be in an enclosed container, for example. And that could be made clear to the students and also the parents before they go on that trip.
Thank you, Senator Lamb. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions for the sponsor? Okay, thank you, Senator Lamb. We've got 2 witnesses in person and 1 virtual, and that's what we have on the list. So in person, we've got Jason Lindy, and Carrie Keaton. So, Mr. Lindy, you get a seat here. You can go first. Each of you has 2.5 minutes. And then after that, Ms. Keaton, you'll go next. So it's all yours, Mr. Lindy.
Well, thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long day, so we appreciate this. Chairman Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, Senator Lamb, and members of the Senate Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee. My name is Jason Lindy, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Government and Community Relations at FAIR, Food Allergy Research and Education. We're the nation's leading and largest non-governmental organization engaged in food allergy advocacy and the largest private funder of food allergy research. I'm speaking on behalf of the more than 100,000 Maryland children under the age of 18 with life-threatening food allergies. I just want to underscore that, 100,000, more than. I'm also a Maryland resident who grew up with a dairy allergy, and my son is allergic to shellfish and finfish. FAIR proudly supports Senator Lamb's legislation, SB 120, which updates the 2009 voluntary guidance from the state on how county school districts should assist children with life-threatening food allergies. You know, this legislative update is desperately needed, as more than half of the county school districts are failing to meet the voluntary guidance. In fact, some school districts have not updated their online menus to include the newest allergen to be labeled, sesame. Fun fact, sesame is found in candy corn, of all places. Every October, we have anaphylactic attacks because of that. Worse yet, the CDC found that the number of children with life-threatening food allergies has doubled over the last 20 years, and for children with a peanut or tree nut allergy is tripled. And food allergies are growing at an even faster rate among Black and Asian American children. We currently have a recipe for disaster on our hands. While we have more children than ever before with life-threatening food allergies, we also have county school districts ignoring the voluntary guidance. We saw this food allergy disaster strike in Amarillo, Texas just 2 weeks ago when a 10-year-old girl named Emerson Kate Cole died because she was given the wrong food at the school cafeteria, although her food allergy was widely known. And her epinephrine autoinjector, it was locked up and could not be accessed by the school nurse who was off that day. We need to act to prevent this tragedy from happening here in Maryland. Thankfully, SB 120 is a reasonable solution that establishes a baseline of standards to protect Maryland's food allergic children, has no fiscal impact, and is not overly burdensome to school districts. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today, applaud the senator and this committee for their work, encourage a favorable report, and will answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ms. Keaton, why don't we go to you, and then we'll open up to any questions. 2.5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee for this opportunity to share my support for Senate Bill 120. I'm the parent of 2 sons with life-threatening anaphylactic food allergies, each of them to multiple foods. Between the 2 of them, they have allergies to 6 of the 9 major allergens. My sons are now 30 and 24 years old, so long past their days in Montgomery County Public Schools. I am thankful that they did avoid serious food reactions during their time in public schools, which required many meetings with school personnel every year to ensure their proper care and safety. Since 1999, I've been a member and for most of that time the facilitator for the Metro DC Food Allergy Support Group. We started with 7 families in 1999, grew to 300 families, and still have active about 150 families. The group is composed of parents of food allergic kids, and they share information on managing all aspects of life with a food allergic child. We have members that live in several Maryland counties. And many members join this group when they are about to send their child to school for the first time so that they can get help in figuring out how to deal with the schools as they face the scary thought of sending them into a situation where somebody else is going to be caring for them. Over the years, this topic has been the most discussed on our very active listserv and at monthly meetings. If there were published guidelines in each school district that would provide a starting point for parents to prepare for their meetings with schools every year, it would be much easier for parents, and these meetings are necessary to happen every single year because changes happen with the kids and with their allergies every year. The second most discussed topic among our support members is restaurant dining. And Senate Bill 120 goes further than those 2009 published guidelines that the state had by requiring the labeling of all ingredients in cafeteria food. I fully support this addition to the school guidelines. This labeling is required by federal law for all packaged foods, and many restaurants also voluntarily started publishing their major food allergens. While my sons did not eat in the school cafeteria during their time in public schools, I did learn the value of this when my son attended UMBC, and their cafeteria did publish the guideline, their menu items, and he was able to safely eat in the school cafeteria. I just want to say thank you to Senator Lamb for reintroducing the bill this year, and I fully support Senate Bill 120. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the two witnesses? Okay, thank you for your testimony. And that brings us to the final witness of the day, who is appearing virtually, signed up favorable. We've got Laura Stewart. Ms. Stewart, how are you? We give you 2.5 minutes, starting now. And you are the final witness of the day.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chairman Senator Feldman and Vice Chair Senator Kagan, and to the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. My name is Laura Stewart. I live in District 18 in Silver Spring, and I am the Vice President for Advocacy for Free State PTA, which is the statewide PTA that represents over 50,000 volunteer members and families in over 500 public schools. Senate Bill 120 aligns with Free State PTA's principle for legislative action, which states that schools must provide a safe environment where all students, teachers, and staff can thrive. One of our founding principles is to promote the safety and well-being of all children and youth. This bill is consistent with the principle and requires each county board of education to adopt, implement, and publish guidelines to reduce the risk to students with anaphylactic food allergies and develop a system to disclose the major food allergens contained in foods served in schools. In fact, as of January 1st, 2023, the Food and Drug Administration includes sesame as the 9th major food allergen. This has some personal meaning to me because I had a child that was severely allergic to sesame. It is somewhat difficult to avoid. It comes in different names, and extra guidance to the school systems on how to avoid such a severe allergy would be helpful, along with the other allergens that are on the list. Today, 1 in 13 children have food allergies, or roughly 2 students in every classroom. Nearly 40% of these children have already experienced a severe or life-threatening allergic reaction, including my child. It's scary. No one wants to go through this. Whatever we can do to avoid this in our schools will make it a safer place for our kids to be able to learn and give parents some level of security when they send their child into a public school. An excellent component of the bill is that there's lots of communication, collaboration between schools, staff, students, and parents regarding notification. And with that, Free State PTA urges a favorable report for SB 02120. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stewart. Any questions that we've got? Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a question for the bill sponsor. Is that okay?
Senator Lamb, you want to come back up here?
Thank you, Senator Lamb. I really appreciate you bringing forward this bill. My question is a combination of one of the pieces of testimony that talk about whether or not all school boards are actually able to have enough expertise to do what the bill requires. And then in the fiscal note, it says that where was it? Hold on. There's a part in the fiscal note that basically says MSDE does not have the capacity to provide oversight and management of this. So I'm just curious if you think that we can leave this in the hands of the local school boards and that's like enough, or if you could respond maybe at a later date to the fiscal note and whatever MSDE said, which kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, so in 2009, so over 10 years ago, MSDE and MDH, or DHMH at the time, had issued guidance for food allergies to schools, and with the belief that the school systems would then adopt their own guidelines. But up to date, only half of the 25 school systems in the state have actually adopted food allergy policies on their website. So there's a huge gap there when it comes to various school systems across the state even having a policy, just a basic policy, right? So listing it on their website, having thought through what the process is if there's a student that contacts them that has a food allergy. Just the very basics are not even being met by about half of the school systems here. And so this bill requires that those be implemented and also made public. I think the enforcement piece is challenging because you can see that even in the last 13 years, not all school systems have moved this to a priority where they're listing it on their website and have come up with a coherent policy. And so this bill really is intended to require them to list that, make it easier because it allows them to post it on the website, they can distribute it electronically, and make it accessible to parents as well. We've learned a lot on food allergies in the last 13 years. This list probably wasn't even, as you heard, sesame was just recently added by FDA. And so there's more ongoing here that I think really drives home the point that at this point, we know enough about food allergies that each school system really ought to have its own policy.
Okay, go on.
So the kids across the state have experienced the same food allergies. So there would be enough guidance, for the locals that in the bill that, it's pretty clear, even if Board of Ed doesn't have somebody with a food policy expertise, there will be guidance coming from MSDE or MDH?
There was broad guidance being provided by MSDE and MDH or DHMH at the time, which was why I think they had believed that this would serve as a foundation for each local school system to be able to build from that and have their own policy. They provided really top-level guidance, right? They didn't want to dictate that, it has to be this part of the cafeteria or that part of the school system or, what the exact setup is in each school. They wanted to defer that to the local school system, but they had, in very broad strokes, at a top level, provided some guidance for the school systems to be able to build from and tailor that to their local needs.
Okay, Senator Carrozza, for either our witness virtual, Ms. Stewart, or now that we've got the sponsor on the...
Thank you,
Either
Mr.
way.
Chair. I have a question for the bill sponsor.
Sure.
Senator Lamb, thank you for the interest in this issue. I actually did a similar bill, but it was voluntary for the restaurants when we had a situation back home, and it was clear that I guess we needed guidance for the restaurants to be able to voluntarily provide the EpiPen. So, I appreciate this focus. I wanted to go back to, you referenced John Willems and the Maryland Associations of Board of Education, that their support with amendments, as I understand it, from the bill hearing yesterday or recently in Ways and Means. And I just wanted to understand if that was obviously representing, I'm checking on my 3 counties just to see where they are, but my understanding is that the process that maybe Senator Hester was referencing to put this in place, that there would be state guidance updated first and then local updates follow, which would lead to a 24, 25 year implementation, just trying to understand that process.
Right. So I think you touched on the amendment, which is exactly, I think, what you were describing. The amendment would give MSDE and MDH time to update their guidance because it had last been issued back in 2009. And so it would give them until August 1st to be able to update their guidance. And then from there, give the local school systems an additional year beyond August 1st of 2023 to be able to put in place their own local guidance. So that's the amendment that we're looking at with MABE, and that should be forthcoming.
And so that would give the locals some flexibility in putting this in place then?
Yeah, I think the intent was always to give the locals some flexibility.
Okay.
You know, because I think they know their school systems best, they know the needs of their students and also the local school setup the best. And so the intention was to give them some flexibility with some top-level guidance from MSDE and MDH. That's why it was done back in 2009, I think with the intention that they thought the locals would then pick up the ball from there, but only about half of them have. And so that's what this bill does, and also has further requirements to have them post it so that it's publicly available, things that probably weren't thought of back in 2009.
Thank you.
Okay, any final questions for either Ms. Stewart or Senator Lamb? Okay, thank you, Ms. Stewart, for weighing in. Thank you, Senator Lamb. And seeing nothing further, the bill hearings for today, our first bill hearings of the session, are hereby adjourned.